It is May 21st as I record this. Our last frost date for our area is June 2nd, but I decided to take a chance and do some transplanting. We installed these blocks last year and planted a climbing winter squash in them, and it's time to clean them up for a new year. The first step was to remove the grass clipping mulch that we put on last fall, and my helper was not helping very much. Using the jet setting on the hose made it easier to remove the roots and rhizomes without breaking them apart in the soil. Each of the blocks then got a couple of scoops of composted sheep's manure. I chose sheep's manure because that's the bag that was open. I then used the hose and my bare hands to mix in the composted sheep's manure into the soil and basically made soil soup. The water needed time to be absorbed, so I went over to the nearby bed with newly sprouting peas and gave that a water. These vining squash were getting so long that moving them in and out to harden them off was actually damaging them, so I figured it was safer to transplant them even with the potential risk of frost. Because these all have the potential to get quite large, I decided to plant them in every other block. This zucca melon can produce some extremely large fruit, so I made sure it was at the end where it would have lots of space to spread out. And once I had it secured against the chain link fence, I removed the pieces of straw that I had around a stem area where it had started to break. One thing I did not need to do was water them after I transplanted them. The final step was to return the grass clipping mulch around the stems. In the foreground, you see the zucca melon, the next one is African drum gourd, and the last two are caveman's club gourds. Next, I need to do something about these really huge crespo squash. I decided to plant these in an area where we had grown a variety of hullis seed pumpkins last year. It's far from the house, but it does give them a lot of room to spread out. When this bed was prepared last year, a layer of very thick cardboard had been laid onto the ground first, and then holes were cut into it, and that's what we planted the pumpkins through last year. And that's how I know where to put the mounds of soil in preparation for the crespo squash. Although I had watered the holes where the transplants would go quite thoroughly, this soil was very, very dry, which made it kind of hydrophobic. So once the squash was transplanted in, I would not be able to water it until a mulch was put in first. The entire bed got a nice thick layer of grass clippings for mulch, and then it got a thorough watering. Because of how dry that soil was, it'll need to be watered every day for a couple more days. Once it's thoroughly soaked down, it will not need to be watered very much at all, just because of how nice and thick that mulch is. The first time we tried to grow crespo squash, it was decimated by deer several times. It did recover really well by the time we could finally protect it, but it was just too late in the season. So for now, I've added these flags to kind of scare the deer away until we can put a proper net fence of some kind around it. Hopefully I didn't jump the gun too much by planting these so early. The long-range forecast is looking good, but, well, you never know in this part of the world.